All right, welcome back. We are ACI Course 7, Class 7 already. It's March 10th, 2025. Let's gather our minds here as we usually do. Please bring your attention to your breath until you hear from me again. Now bring to mind that being who for you is a manifestation of ultimate love, ultimate compassion, ultimate wisdom, and see them there with you. They are gazing at you with their unconditional love for you. Smiling at you with their holy great compassion, their wisdom radiating from them, that beautiful golden glow encompassing you in its light. And then we hear them say, bring to mind someone you know who's hurting in some way. Feel how much you would like to be able to help them. Recognize that the worldly ways we try fall short. How wonderful it will be when we can also help them in some deep and ultimate way, a way through which they will go on to stop their distress forever. Deep down, we know this is possible. Learning about karma and emptiness, we glimpse how it's possible. And so I invite you to grow that wish into a longing. And that longing into an intention. Then turn your mind back to your precious holy being. We know that they know what we need to know, what we need to learn yet, what we need to do yet to become one who can help this other in this deep and ultimate way. And so we ask them, please, please teach us that. And they are so happy that we've asked. Of course, they agree. Our gratitude arises. We want to offer them something exquisite. And so we think of the perfect world they are teaching us how to create. We imagine we can hold it in our hands and we offer it to them following it with our promise to practice what they teach us, using our refuge prayers to make our promise. Here is the great earth, filled with fragrant incense and covered with a blanket of flowers. The great mountain, 4 lands, wearing the jewel of the sun and the moon. In my mind, I make them the paradise of a Buddha and offer it all to you. By this deed, may every living being experience the pure world. Idam Guru Ratna Mandala Kam Niryatayami. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the highest community. Through the merit that I do in sharing this class and the rest, may we reach Buddhahood for the sake of every living being. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the highest community. Through the merit that I do in sharing this class and the rest, may we reach Buddhahood for the sake of every living being. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the highest community. Through the merit that I do in sharing this class and the rest, may all beings reach their total awakening for the benefit of every single other. All right, excuse me a moment. I don't have my phone close by and its alarm is going off. The time I got to it, it shut off. But it's going to go back on. Okay, so sorry. Last class, we finally learned about those 4 chains. I'd been talking about them for a while. Those 4 states of mind that Geshe-la kept saying, those 4 really ugly states of mind that you have to have in order for the deed done to break a root vow. And the 4 are to not think the thing is wrong, the deed is wrong, to be willing to do it again. You have no shame or consideration regarding it. And you had a sense of enjoyment, satisfaction by doing it. It's like, those don't sound like very ugly states of mind, do they? But they're ugly in the sense that they are so mistaken. Because we're talking about doing a deed that when we get the result of it, it will be really unpleasant for us. And this means we haven't connected that dot. And so we believe that a deed of criticizing another is not a wrong thing to do. Okay, and we have all those other 4 chains with. So we can see how it really is an ugly state of mind, but not in this, big mentally afflicted way, just mistaken, so badly mistaken that we'll do a deed listed in those 16 of the 18 root vows and right, not even realize it technically. So then your quiz asks you, what's the difference between shame and consideration, notsa and trelyu? And I love this topic. It's so rich. But on the surface, shame, notsa, means you you will avoid doing a certain deed out of your own self-conscience. Even if nobody ever knew, you would withhold from doing that deed because you know it's something that's going to hurt others and yourself. So you won't let yourself do it. That's this sense of healthy shame. I don't like the word shame. Healthy self-conscientiousness. And then Trelya, consideration, means avoiding doing a harmful deed out of concern for its impact on others. Not just the other you're doing the deed toward, but on the superficial level, they say, I'll avoid doing that deed because of what others will think about me. And, that's just on this level, because technically we shouldn't choose our deeds based on what somebody else is going to think of us, right? But in terms of upholding the reputation of our spiritual practice, whatever that is, our own mind is seeing us care about the impact we have on others' minds. And that's this healthy state of Trelya, the impact that we have on others. So then why is it wrong to be comforted by the fact that we can renew our vows once we've broken them? And because we learned that we can't restore our root vows to the same glory, they call it, the same strength as when we first got them. And what that does is it blocks our ability to ripen the goodness of seeing emptiness directly with bodhicitta in our heart mind in the lifetime in which we broke that bodhisattva vow. So yes, we can restore the vows, but somehow that, having done that break, blocks this ability to ripen the goodness necessary to reach first bodhisattva bhumi. Then it makes it difficult to meet spiritual teachers in our future. And they just say in the future. They don't designate the future, this life or future lives. Anyway. And then lastly, your quiz asks you, what are the 3 ways that you can lose your vows? So 1 is to hold wrong views. 2 is to give up bodhicitta, and there's 2 ways to do that. In a fit of whatever, disappointment, despair, I give up, or in a, more considered fashion, I need to give my vows back to my vow master. I can't do this. And then the 3rd way is to do any one of the 16 with all 4 chains intact. Okay. All right, so we are ready to go on to learning about the secondary vows. They're called nyeme. No, they're called, nyejes. The root downfalls are tsatum, there, we're all a little bigger. Satung is the root vow. Nyeje is the word for the secondary vows. Nyeje means did bads. The secondary vows are called did bads. I did a did bad. I think that's funny. So our learning about our did bads comes to us from Master Chandra Komi's text. He did a survey of vows. And so Geshe Michael is using his text called 20 Verses on Vows to learn these. Now, in the behaviors that are the secondary vows, there are two main factors or two like categories of states of mind through which we will do a deed or that breaks a secondary vow. So these two are called breaking the vow in an afflicted way and breaking the vow in a non-afflicted way. Now, of course, both breaking of the vows is afflicted, but the difference is that breaking a vow in an afflicted way means that we are actively under the influence of a wrong mental state like anger, jealousy, pride, greed, upset in some way, fear, revenge, right? Make the list of things that make us willing to do something that if we're like the observer watching is like, oh my gosh, when that comes back to me, it will be ugly. Further, oh my gosh, that's listed in one of the Bodhisattva vows. So afflicted means we're under this high emotional content. To do the deed that breaks the vow in a non-afflicted way means that we're just lazy. We're not paying it close enough attention to our behavior choices to decide whether to do that deed or not. We're just on automatic pilot or out of forgetfulness. Right? Somehow we get in this state of mind that we've forgotten that we have these vows. Not meaning, it's like completely gone from our mind, but we just don't have it in the forefront of our mind. They call that non-afflicted. Of course, it's still afflicted, but you can feel the difference between doing a behavior out of this, not paying enough attention, or doing the behavior because we're so upset in the moment. Either way, either state of mind that motivates the deed still breaks the deed. Now, again, with the secondary vows, they can be fully restored. We fully restore them by confessing them to one person or more who would understand with the four powers in mind. Right? So anyway, so let's go through these seven. Through these secondary vows. We'll do part of them this class, part of them next class, 8. Yeah, I think it takes two classes to finish them all. These secondary vows are designed to help us avoid deeds that interfere with our ability to practice our 6 perfections. So the vowed behaviors are things that we avoid doing so that our efforts at perfection of giving can grow stronger. It's kind of an odd way of thinking of it. So the first 7 of our secondary vows, there in the scripture, it says, they act against the perfection of giving, meaning if we do the deed that the vow is saying don't do, doing the deed damages our ability to do our perfection of giving. By avoiding doing that deed, we are growing our goodness to be able to better practice our perfection of giving. So the first one out of the first 7, the vow says not to offer the 3 to the 3, which means I will avoid not offering my body, speech, and mind to the three jewels. They don't say how often. Here in Bodhisattva vows, generally we say you go for refuge 3 times in the morning and 3 times in the night. And this one doesn't say that. It just says of not offering. So I guess it would mean at least once. So this is saying, in order to help grow our ability to practice our perfection of giving, we would want to be daily making offerings of our body, speech, and mind to the three jewels, minimum once a day to the three jewels. We remember Buddha jewel doesn't mean Shakyamuni Buddha, it means the emptiness of enlightenment so that we can reach it. And that the Dharma jewel is the direct perception of emptiness and the cessations that come as a result. And again, showing us that how we reach Buddhahood, the end of suffering. And then the Sangha jewel, those who have had the direct perception of emptiness and so can teach us what worked for them, right? Assuming that if we do something similar, it will work for us. And so to make offerings of body, speech, and mind, we do something with our physical body. It can be a prostration, it can be prayer hands, something to physically demonstrate our respect to these three ideas, really. And then we do something with our speech. Typically, it's our refuge prayer. And then we do something with our mind, right? Which is thinking about what we're saying in our refuge prayer. Best if with our thinking about our refuge prayer, we are including in that thinking the understanding that understanding emptiness is the key and perceiving emptiness directly is the doorway, right? Towards the end of suffering and total Buddhahood, if that's our goal, which it is because we're studying Bodhisattva vows. Geshe-la likes to reinforce that when we go for refuge in the three jewels, and we're thinking about the Dharma jewel, he likes to remind us that when one has their direct perception of emptiness and come out, they've only destroyed 3 mental afflictions out of the 84,000 that we have, that we're so good at. But those 3 mental afflictions, they are gone forever from our mind stream. One of them is doubt in the path. The second one is the intellectual belief in self-existence of anything or anybody. And the third is the belief that harmful spiritual practices can be beneficial. But those 3 mental afflictions that are gone from your mind stream forever allow us to get used to living according to them, such that we systematically destroy all the rest of the mental afflictions, in particular the mental affliction of the perceiving things as having their own natures, because it's not being replanted, because our belief in the truth of that is gone. So really, when we are taking our refuge. We're taking refuge in this ideal of Buddhahood and this ideal of reaching that direct perception. And then in the understanding that someone who's done it already can teach us by example, and then, of course, by scripture. So our refuge is not in a person. It's not in the image of the Buddha in the statue or the tanka. It's in our understanding of the marriage of karma and emptiness, the marriage of the no-self nature of self and others, and the impact our behavior thus has on our mind for creating our future. Right? So all of that going into our refuge, as we say, you know, I go for refuge to Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. To not, so the vow is, I vow to avoid not offering my body, speech, and mind to the three jewels at least once a day. Right? Making this practice. Vow number 2. I will avoid allowing improper thoughts of desire to go on. Right? The vow just says allowing improper thoughts of desire to go on. I need for my own mind to add, I will avoid this, or it sounds like I'm vowing to do that. And of course I'm not, right? So I vow to avoid allowing improper thoughts of desire to go on. So improper thoughts of desire mean excessive desire for anything. We are in the desire realm. These desires that we're talking about are sensual desires, meaning the desires for pleasures that we get through experience of our sensory input, right? Our form being. And so usually this refers to food and sex, right, in the desire realm. But any pleasure that we desire, that desire would push us in such a way that we would be willing to do something harmful, gross, or otherwise to another to get that pleasure. And, you know, we say, oh, you know, I'm not that kind of person. I won't do that. But it can be as subtle as, you know, taking the last cookie when you know somebody else would want it. Taking the last cookie when nobody else wants it, that's fine. Right? When it's been left for you, that's fine. But it's just being on this selfish automatic pilot that is what drives this excessive desire. It's not just desire. To want a cookie, to want an apple, to want something is not breaking our bodhisattva behavior. It's letting that I want, I need, I want, right? To get bigger and bigger until we're willing to do something that when it comes back to us, it will be unpleasant in order to get the pleasant thing. So when we think of it that way, it's like, oh yeah, I see why this is guiding me in my behavior choices. Another state of mind that leads to this excessive desire is having this state of like never really being satisfied with what we have or what we get. And then another excessive desire is an attachment for praise and honor that will drive us to behaviors that are essentially harmful to ourselves and others in order to get that praise. So although we don't really think of that as a sensory desire, it is still, it's like a emotional sensory desire we're after. So to let these thoughts go on without a struggle is what breaks this vow. The struggle against the I want, I want, I want, I want. if we're struggling against it and we still end up doing the deed, they say you don't break the vow. The struggle is the protection, even if in the end it's like, oh, I just couldn't avoid eating that last piece. You still reap a negative karma, but you don't break the vow. Third one, I will avoid not respecting my elders, which is funny. What does that have to do with my perfection of giving? To respect my elders. Here, what elders means is anyone who has taken their bodhisattva vows before you took yours, earlier than you. And it's like, how would I know that? You know, if I lived in a monastery where I was attending everybody's ceremonies, I would know who had them before me because I was there as the little kid and then there afterwards. But in our arena where we just don't really have that kind of exposure, we really don't know who has bodhisattva vows ahead of us. And so my advice is assume everybody does. And then treat everybody with this kind of respect. And to treat them with respect means no matter what their age, you put them ahead of yourself. In line for something, offer them the first food or drink, hold the door open for them, stand up when they enter the room. You know, these are ways that in our tradition, it shows respect. Don't stick the bottoms of your feet out towards them. You know, whatever way we show respect in our own cultures, follow that behavior towards others to the best of our ability. I will avoid not respecting my elders. Number 3. Number 4, I will avoid not answering a question. So this means any question, not just a Dharma question. We are growing our bodhisattvahood, and our bodhisattvahood is based on I want to reach total enlightenment for the sake of all sentient beings, which we grew that wish having recognized that all beings are suffering, most of them way worse than I am, and I've decided I care about them. You know, I understand karma and emptiness well enough to see that, first of all, whatever they're experiencing is results of their own past deeds. And by changing their deeds, they can change their suffering. And then second, oh, I realize whatever suffering I see in them, it's really my seeds. And so I want to help them, like I owe it to them to help them, because right, it's I'm making them suffer in that way. So it means we care. And any opportunity for interaction with people is an opportunity to show whether we care or not. Show to them or show to ourselves. Both, right? It's as important to show to ourselves the state, how much we really do care for people when we say the words, you know, Buddhahood for everyone, but then somebody asks a stupid question and you're annoyed with them and just give them a flippant answer or a sarcastic answer or don't answer at all. It's like your own mind's going, yeah, honey, how much do you care about them? That's the practice, right? Is to overcome our own habit of selfishness and judgment and criticism, and grow our bodhicitta in those situations. So any question, it's considered a disrespect of another to ignore the question or give them a flippant reply or an irrelevant reply. And it does not matter whether you think the question is important or not. Again, it's an opportunity to show ourselves how much we care, how much we're willing to give, right? Not material thing, but just to give our attention, to give our respect, to give our concern for helping them. Yes, Susanna.
Thank you. And number 4, this means just the Sangha questions. Or I don't want to answer all different questions to different people.
Yeah.
Private questions.
Right. With respect, in terms of respect, it does specifically say people who have taken vows ahead of you. And so it would imply that you're just talking about, other people in the Dharma. But in terms of growing our bodhisattva behavior, you would start there, and then we would want to grow it to include anybody. It's about showing respect. It's not so much about who is the object of showing our respect. So ultimately, we would want to be growing the habit of showing respect to everybody. Okay. Does that clarify? So now there are these things called nyemes. Here it is. Nyeme means an exception, a behavior that is an exception to the rule. Nyemes. That means that there are certain circumstances when, for instance, we cannot answer a question and not break this secondary vow. And we need to be careful with these nyemes, these exceptions, that we don't use them as an excuse to carry on our usual selfish behavior, but to recognize that with these secondary vows, there are circumstances where you don't break the vow, even when you do a behavior or fail to do a behavior that fits one of the secondary vows. So for this one, not answering a question, and the previous one, failing to show respect to someone who's senior to you, the exceptions are that if you are sick and someone asks you a question, right, you don't have to answer it and you don't break the vow. If you are sick, you don't have to jump up and hold the door for them. You see? And you don't break the vow by not doing so. If you're asleep or groggy in a situation where you are teaching and the question interrupts the flow, if you are listening to a Dharma talk and answering the question would distract you or others there, if you would disrupt the Dharma teaching, and lastly, if you need to teach that person a lesson. So we're going to hear this one repeatedly. If you need to teach somebody a lesson, you could not answer their question or you could not show respect. But it's the dangerous exception, because again, our self-existent me with all its petty mental afflictions will want to use this one to justify behaviors. The advice is, in order to use this exception, I needed to teach them a lesson. We need to be very bodhisattva wise. we need to really know that the other person needs the lesson that you think you're going to teach them. So, and we would need to have our bodhicitta motivation really, really strong as we do it. Again, it's like put yourself in the position of somebody you know trying to teach you a lesson when you haven't given them permission to teach you a lesson, right? There are some that you've given permission to teach you a lesson. Our parents got automatic permission. And then our teachers, even in school teachers, they get automatic permission. And then in our spiritual life, right, we pick a teacher. Any teacher we learn from, we've given some kind of automatic permission. But then when we take our own personal teacher, that's what it is to take a teacher, is we're asking them to help me, mold me, show me what I need. So we're giving them personal permission to give us these lessons that we need. But to somebody we haven't given that permission to, like, what's our reaction going to be to somebody trying to teach us a lesson? Like, how dare you do that to me? And that the point of this is put yourself in the position of the other person you're about to blah blah or not answer a question to teach them a lesson. How's that going to go over? How's it going to be when it comes back to you? Are they likely to even get the message? No, I've done it to David before. He asks a lot of questions, and I'll be in a bad mood, and he'll ask a question that I think is particularly, if he just thought about it, he'd figure it out himself. So I give him this sarcastic answer, thinking that he'll get the message. Think about your question before you ask me. But it doesn't. He doesn't get the lesson. He gets insulted, right? And hurt by it doesn't teach the lesson that I thought I was teaching. Of course it doesn't. So it's like, shoot. All of these vows are avoiding behaviors that if we do them and we get the result back, they will be unpleasant. So again, it's not Buddha saying, do this, don't do that because I say so. It's protecting us and further protecting us in our ability to do the 6 perfections, as I said before. All right, so be careful about the nyeme to teach somebody a lesson. Number 5, I will avoid not accepting a sincere invitation. Any invitation. So think of the context of these bodhisattva vows. As Buddha gathered disciples, they were gathering into groups that lived together, and those became, monastic communities. And those monastic communities they lived together, and to become part of that monastic community meant you gave up your worldly life. And that meant that leaders of those communities were responsible for coordinating life. And then the monks would go out and, beg for their food, and they needed to request for the cloth for their robes. They needed to be offered anything that they need for their living supplies. And it grew into systems where there were the heads of the monastery whose job it was to do the gaining support from the community so that the ordained people could get their needs met. And then the job of those ordained people then was, at the request of their supporters, they would come and do the rituals in the households, or read the sutras, or do the consecrations, right? They would do the ritual stuff in the communities, and they had this mutual support relationship. So they might get an invitation to come to lunch to read the Heart Sutra, for the 100th time in this particular household. And one could imagine that a monk or the head guy monk would be thinking, come on, we were there last week, we've got prayers to do, and have this non-bodhisattva thought to say, nah, I don't want to go there. I don't want to do that. And then have a reason why they don't go. And from an ordained point of view, that some situations could be, perfectly correct to not accept that invitation. But once we're on our bodhisattva track, it's like, no, every invitation is an opportunity to go and interact with other beings in such a way to help them come to end their suffering forever someday. As a bodhisattva, we are eager to take any opportunity to interact with any other being. So this one means any invitation that's sincerely offered. We would break this secondary vow if we said, oh, no thanks, out of pride, out of anger, out of just laziness. So now there's a series of nyemes. The exceptions here are if you're sick, of course you don't have to accept. If you've already accepted another invitation, if it's too far away and going there would be difficult or dangerous, you don't break the vow to say no. If you are aware that the invitation is out of some kind of bad motivation, you don't break the vow by not accepting. If it would divert you from some virtuous act, you can say no. Or if you are very bodhisattva wise and you need to teach them a lesson. So Geshe-la pointed out, not liking the person is not an exception. So you can't say no just because you don't like them. You can't say no just because you don't want to do. You don't want to go. You don't want to. Right? Your bodhisattva attitude is them first, their need first. They are all our children once we take our bodhisattva vow. If they invite you to go hang glide off a cliff, you don't break this vow by saying, oh, thanks very much, but no thanks. Right? You don't put yourself into danger. Like lots of considerations as well. So number 6, I will avoid not accepting money, gifts, etc. when they are sincerely offered. So again, in the context, the monks relied upon offerings. But what if someone offered to a monk something that the monk's vows said that they shouldn't have, they couldn't have? Like, for instance, a fully ordained monk is not supposed to handle money. And yet, in more modern times, that's what's offered mostly is money. And so an ordained person would need the money to be actually given to someone else, or they're supposed to say, I I can't accept that because I can't handle it. It needs to go to the treasurer of the monastery or whatever. But as a bodhisattva monk, yes, they accept that money because of the benefit to the person offering it. Right? So they need to make this judgment call between their two different vows. As lay people, we don't have that kind of decision making specifically, but there are other situations where somebody might offer us something and we really don't want it. And as a bodhisattva, this vow says accept it gracefully, be respectful, be thankful, and right, pass it off to somebody else, somebody who would use it, would need it. Difference between bodhisattva and non-bodhisattva. It's our accepting the offering is for their benefit, not ours. So there are exceptions, nimies, for this one. If you know you'd get attached to what they're offering you, you can refuse it. It's curious that they think of that. If you think they would later regret having given it to you, then don't accept it. We've heard the story of Rinpoche giving teachings in Washington, D.C. in the home of a wealthy woman in a beautiful home. And in one of, her inspirations at the amazingness of his teachings, she offered him that house. Here, you can have this house. You can have a center, make it into a center in Washington, D.C. And she was sincere and able to do that. But Rinpoche was able to see that she was in that first blush of excitement about the Dharma. And he knew that in the long run, she would regret it. And so although they were in need of a place, he really wanted it. He knew to say, thank you so much, but no, you keep the house. We'll keep coming here, but no. If you think the goods might be stolen, you don't break the vow by not accepting. You don't have to say to the person, I'm not accepting these because I think they're stolen. Right? You just gracefully refuse. And then if you think that the person has already dedicated that thing to someone else, you can refuse it. And lastly, if it would be a problem for you to have it because it would disturb others to see you have it, then by refusing it, we don't break this vow. Number 7, I will avoid not giving the Dharma to a person who wants it, here motivated by laziness, anger, or anything other than attachment. Why do they designate anything other than attachment? Because we had a root vow number 2, where the main motivation for failing to give material things or the Dharma was our attachment to the thing, our attachment to the Dharma. Meaning we would withhold some kind of Dharma teaching so that we would be sure that we would always be in a higher position than the student. The reason we wouldn't give the Dharma, it doesn't mean not giving, a physical sutra. It means somebody says, would you give me a teaching on such and such? And then out of, some icky state of mind, you think if I teach them that, they're gonna understand it. You know, they're gonna understand things better than me. And I'm gonna kind of lose my position here. And because of that self-concern, we make some excuse for, no, I won't teach you that. That's to stay, to not give the Dharma, to not give a teaching out of fear that the student will get better than you, smarter. What do you mean, wiser than you? When as a teacher, it's like you want your students to get wiser than you. You want to put yourself out of business. And as a bodhisattva teacher, even more so. So the state of mind to withhold is like anti-bodhisattva. But it also then, if you think of the seeds, it's going to block our ability to gain realizations, let alone get more teachings. And somehow that blocks our ability to do our perfection of giving well. Okay, so there are exceptions to this rule. If we're sick and somebody has asked us to teach the Dharma and we say, oh, I'm so sorry, I can't do it, we don't break the vow. If we need to teach the student a lesson, if the student is asking, if you somehow know that the student is asking for teachings in order to have an opportunity to be disrespectful or critical of you, you don't break the vow by not giving the teaching. Not to protect yourself, though, to protect them from making the negative karma of criticizing someone that they've asked for teachings from. If you know they can't get the meaning, you don't break the vow to not teach them. If they're not sitting properly, they say that specifically. The way we sit in the presence of a teacher is the way that we show our respect for them. If we know that they would freak out if you taught it, then you don't break the vow by not teaching. If they don't believe in or aren't interested in what you're teaching, or if they have deep wrong views, or if you know they won't follow the teachings, or if you think the teachings, they'll use them to justify their wrong behavior more. Any of those reasons, any of those reasons for not sharing the Dharma when asked protects us from damaging this vow. There's one more. If you think that they would take those teachings out to those who are not ready yet, you don't break the vow to not teach it to them. Yes, Susanna. We need to unmute. Okay, I'm going to stop my share and pause the recording while Susanna gets her computer figured out. Let's take a break. Pause. Recording. Okay, thanks, Fish. Let's do number 8. Wait, first, the next 9 vows are vows against the perfection of morality. Meaning, if we do the deed that the vow is saying don't do, we damage our practice of perfection of morality. When we avoid the deeds, we grow our ability to do our perfection of morality. It does not mean these are the only deeds that are our moral behavior, right? We know moral behavior guidelines are the 10 non-virtues, the 5 lifetime lay vows, the ordained vows, the Monday vows, right? There's lots of morality behaviors that aren't specified in our secondary vows. But these particular behaviors help our ability to do our other moralities better. It's interesting. So number 8, I will avoid not reaching out to those who have sullied morality. So sullied morality means someone who has broken their vows. So technically it means somebody who's in the Dharma has vows at whatever level, and for whatever reason, they don't keep their vows, right? Their behavior is not consistent with the Sangha behavior. Anyone with poor morality. When we extend these vows beyond the monastic or Dharma center, it means anybody that we're aware of who has this poor morality. And our tendency, I don't know, probably human tendency, is to avoid people whose behavior is, not moral. Moral people avoid people whose behavior is not moral. It's, I think, a normal pattern. And then as a bodhisattva, we're saying, I understand their suffering, I understand where it's coming from for them, where it's coming from for me. And they are amongst these beings who are, my mother, and so I owe them, or my child, they don't know any better, and I'm the one, right, to help them grow. That to say, oh, but they're just so bad, they have these terrible habits, I can't help them, I don't want to help them, right? I'm afraid to help them. It's counter our bodhisattva vow, but in the sense that somehow by avoiding helping them, we break our own ability to keep our own morality. And it seems like, no, it would be the reverse. If I get into a close relationship with someone with bad morality, I'm going to slip too. It's going to worsen my perfection of morality, isn't it? And so it really is a delicate vow here. The person of sullied morality, they are suffering big time because they've justified those behaviors as being what will bring them happiness. And those behaviors are going to bring them nothing but worse and worse suffering in the future. We know that, we can see that. They can't see that, or they wouldn't be doing it. They need our help more than those who have a system for following their own morality. Those are the ones we want to help. But the ones who need our help are these ones with sullied morality. So, this one's is a hard one for me. Now, there are times when within a group, there might be someone who's, for whatever reason, behaving in ways that are incompatible with the group's goal, the group's agreements, and the one who's in charge has tried and tried to help that person fit better, and it just isn't happening. And at some point, that person may need to be exited from the group. And that does happen. It's happened a couple of times at Diamond Mountain, unfortunately. How that's carried about, right, requires great skill and compassion. And if we're the one in charge, right, it's up to us to do that, carry out that obligation in a way that minimizes damage to our own vows as we're trying to help that other get in a place where they are not continuing to damage themselves by way of their interaction with the group. And so again, these vows are directed at Dharma communities, but as bodhisattvas, we're out beyond our Dharma community. So it's gonna pertain, for us beyond that. So there are, of course, exceptions. If you getting close to this person would alienate others, then we don't break this vow by not trying to go to help that person with sullied morality. If we would be badly influenced by them, we don't break our vow by not going to help. If we are a great bodhisattva and we need to teach them a lesson. And then lastly, Geshe-la said, there are certain ordained prescribed behavior that requires them to not follow this vow within their system. And I don't really know what that means. And I don't think you need to put it on your homework, but just recognize that there are things we don't know about ordained vowed life that if we're close enough, we might see, stuff happening in an ordained group and we don't really understand it because we don't have those vows. And so again, I think this is just a message to not judge what's going on in places where we don't know. The moral to the story is, as a bodhisattva, for our own perfection of morality, we don't just ignore those who are having trouble with their morality. If we can help them in some way, we would try. Okay. Number 9, I will avoid failing to follow the rules, which, if followed, would inspire faith in other people. I will avoid failing to follow the rules, which, if followed, would inspire faith in other people. So again, in the context of the ordained, the ordained have their prescribed behaviors. The lay people aren't supposed to know specifics about the vows that the ordained have, but lay people are invited to ordination ceremonies in which the vows are recited. So if you're paying attention, you hear what those vows are. So you'll have some idea of what it is to live as an ordained person, which means as a lay person who's giving support to those ordained people, you're going to have a certain expectation of their behavior, aren't you? And then you, the ordained person, have this obligation to uphold the reputation of your group in order to positively influence the minds of the lay people who support you. And it's supposed to be this symbiotic growing relationship for both. And of course, it can go wrong, but the ordained's responsibility is to show by example, right? To set the example for the lay people. Then the ordained person gets their bodhicitta, and they have bodhisattva vows now, and their bodhisattva vows say they do more interacting with the community than you would with your ordained vows. And in that interaction with the community, the danger is that you get too familiar with the lay community, and then they're still watching you as an ordained person, and you're interacting with them as a bodhisattva, and it would be easy to cross the line and do things from in your mind as a bodhisattva that influences the lay people in a way that makes them think, oh, these ordained people from this monastery, they're playing games and, doing things they're not supposed to do. So there's this tricky situation where you're engaging with your lay community in more non-ordained ways, at the same time needing to keep your ordained demeanor, to keep the to help the minds of the lay people stay, what am I trying to say? Respectful, stay, so they have this bodhisattva vow that says, even as a bodhisattva, you still need to uphold your demeanor why am I having trouble? That conveys and upholds the respect of the lay people. And if we don't, we damage our bodhisattva vows. So in the bodhisattva behavior of engaging more with these people, we cause them to think less highly of ordained people because now they like bodhisattvas better. We've damaged our bodhisattva vow. See how tricky? So, not being ordained, or not being ordained and not in a place where we have this situation as bodhisattvas, now this vow is about that way in which our behavior impacts others when others do know that we're a practitioner on some spiritual path. So suppose the people at work or in your community know you're a Buddhist, or know you're bodhisattva, or even know you're on a spiritual path, then as we interact with them, or as they're watching us interact with others, they're growing an opinion about our path, whether they know anything about it or not. They're growing an opinion about our path. And so a bodhisattva is like, I'm out to do anything for anybody. And at the same time, we are representatives of the path to enlightenment. And so we want to uphold this inspiring behavior. I think that came across. So it means following the rules even better. The rules that they're talking about here are the 10 non-virtues, avoiding the 10 non-virtues, keeping our 5 lifetime lay vows very well. If you have ordained vows, keeping those very well. As we are out and amongst a non non-dharma community. Okay. All right. Number 10. I will avoid performing deeds which are only of lesser benefit for all living beings. I will avoid performing deeds which are only of lesser benefit for all living beings. This is a hard one because it's like you can always say, well, what I've just done is the highest thing that I could do, but it's not the highest thing possible. I'm always doing something lesser. And it's like just doing dishes, isn't that lesser than reading the Sutra of Golden Light out loud? Like, how can you go through life and not be doing something lesser at any moment? So to be honest with you, I don't know how this one really gets kept, although it's our state of mind that makes something lesser or greater, technically. So we could be doing the dishes is right in the highest, as the highest benefit for all beings, if we're just thinking doing dishes happening now, right? Really, bodhicitta, really, right? Karma and emptiness happening. However, we grow our bodhicitta and have our bodhicitta in mind with anything that we do is how we help ourselves keep this vow. However, that said, Geshe-la explained that in Buddhism, there are what are called natural rules and prescribed rules. The natural rules refer to the morality code that's universal. That's the 10 non-virtues. Avoiding the 10 non-virtues, training ourselves in their opposite, could call them the 10 virtues, of not killing, not stealing, not sexual misconduct, not lying, etc. Those 10, they're common to civilized life. And then there are prescribed rules. These came about when an event happened in Buddha's time, like some disciple did something that hurt somebody else. And so Lord Buddha made a rule against that kind of behavior in order to protect everybody from going through that again. So that those prescribed rules were made to protect the group, but also they were designed to uphold the opinion of non-group people to the group. So we could say it was to uphold the opinion of others of Buddhism. But Buddhism wasn't Buddhism yet in Buddha's time. Like, I don't know where along his teaching career that what he was teaching became Buddhism. I don't really know. Like, I take for granted that Buddha was teaching Buddhism, but come on, there was no Buddhism when Buddha was teaching. He was teaching this new idea, right? Connecting the dot from the Vedas in a different way to people that were trained in other, right, religious ways. So this new way of thought, this new, thing is developing, and the prescribed rules were behaviors that he saw would help people that weren't interested be more likely to be interested. And so that's what our vowed behavior is then partly about as well, is there are still many, many beings who don't know anything about Buddhism, and those who are practicing it would want to convey by their behavior that there is some tool through which we can reduce our stress level, we could become better beings. We're not out to make other people Buddhists, we're out to help other people be happy. But even to be able to do that, right? We need to have a good reputation. Okay, so the proscribed rules were rules designed to keep the ordained life simple. It was mostly restricted activity, restricted ownership, so that they could maintain their focus on their practices. Then the Bodhisattva rules are rules, guidelines of behavior on how to help people. Because if we're trying to help people from our old worldly beliefs of how to help people, we're just perpetuating the suffering in our efforts to help. So he gave these higher guidelines for how to help people. And then these guidelines of behavior overrule the other prescribed rules that were restrictive rules, but only if you're really using them to benefit others. So Geshe gave the example. There's a monk's rule that they can, if they're given cloth for robes, they have 10 days to get their robes made or to give that cloth away, to get rid of it. They're not allowed to store it. But once a monk has bodhisattva vows and someone gives them cloth for robes, they may decide, I'm going to keep this cloth until somebody else needs a new set of robes. I don't care that mine are kind of tattered. I'm going to keep this cloth. And in fact, if this person who gave me cloth has more extra cloth, can I have more? And I'll store it until somebody else has need for it. And then I'll pass it along. And they don't break their monk's vow by storing that cloth more than 10 days while they're waiting to either make robes for somebody else or give the cloth to someone who's needy. And yet, if someone did not know that they had bodhisattva vows and saw that they were storing cloth, they would think, oh, that monk's being a bad monk, he's storing cloth. So the monk needs to be skillful in their ability to coordinate both those vows. So for those with it not ordained, our skillful is coordinating the 10 non-virtues, 5 lifetime lay vows, and our bodhisattva vows. And those are less contradictory than the ordained vows. Okay. Number 11. I will avoid not breaking one of the 7 vows of morality when an extraordinary circumstance requires it. I will avoid not breaking one of the 7 vows of morality when an extraordinary circumstance requires it. So now the 7 vows of morality, what they mean by that term is the first 7 of the 10 non-virtues. They're not really vows. They are, guidelines of morality. The first 7 are the 3 of body, 4 of speech. And this bodhisattva vow is saying, I will avoid not breaking. I will avoid not killing if there's a specific circumstance where it was necessary to do so. I will avoid not stealing if there's a specific, you get it? Not sex, not lying, not divisive, not harsh, not useless, when there's a specific need to do so. And it's a dangerous vow because it sounds like it's giving us permission to kill, steal, lie, cheat, right? Device. And of course, the circumstances, extraordinary circumstance that requires it is really extraordinary. And when we understand that this, we can go, okay, we can put that vow right there on the shelf until it's time. And we won't be breaking it when we don't kill, steal, etc. So the idea of an extraordinary set of circumstances means that from our side, this vow only applies to us if we have these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different qualities that we've already grown in ourselves. So the first is we must be a bodhisattva who has been practicing and perfecting it for many trillions of years, like for many eons, it says. Secondly, we must have extraordinary insight into when it would be necessary to do something strange or unusual, meaning harmful, to help someone else. Third one, we must have mahakaruna, great compassion. Great compassion means that state of mind that looks on every being as their own only child burning on hot coals. And understanding the emptiness and dependent origination of that situation, of that being, and what's going on. So the fourth is we must have bodhicitta. So it's when they designate between great compassion and bodhicitta, it's reminding us to think of bodhicitta in those two forms. The bodhicitta of the wish, I want to reach total enlightenment for the sake of all sentient beings, and the bodhicitta as the wisdom, having had the direct perception of emptiness. Then, last one, we must know that there is no other alternative than to do that wrong morality in order to help the person. In order to help the person. So it's not enough to just have bodhisattva vows. It's not enough to have had bodhisattva vows for many lifetimes. We have to have all 5 of these qualities. And apparently we'll know it when we have it. So if we aren't sure, then we don't have it. In which case, don't kid yourself. And they give us a specific example. And we've heard it before, but pretend you haven't. So this is a story from Shakyamuni Buddha's previous lifetimes as a bodhisattva. He was this great bodhisattva in the form of a ship captain. And he's taken this ship back and forth between India and Sri Lanka or wherever, that they go to get jewels, lots of jewels. And he had this ship full of 500 merchants who had all their wares and another person. And the ship captain sees that this 501st passenger, he's intending to kill all 500 to get the wares, probably intending to kill the ship captain too, in order to get all the wares. And the ship captain, out of his great compassion, this great bodhisattva, he kills the guy. He kills the murderer before the murderer can kill the 500 people. So the question is, out of compassion for whom does he kill the guy? Now, the first time you heard that story, honestly, my mind said, oh, he was trying to save the 500. And then, is that who his compassion was for? No, it was astonishing to me when I heard, no, his compassion was for the murderer. Because he saw that the murderer was going to make the negative karma of killing 500 people out of his greed. And his heart was like, I can't let that happen. What can I do? You know, how can I convince the guy? And in his ability to see the situation, he saw that the best thing he could do for the guy, the murderer, was to cut off his life before he made the karma of cutting off the life of 500, because of the karma, the suffering that he would get in the future from killing those 500. The Bodhisattva ship captain was willing to take the karma of killing one guy. Like, he did get the karma of killing somebody. His Bodhisattva vows did not mean it was okay to kill. It meant that he was willing to take on that karma to protect that guy from so many eons in hell realm. That he kills the guy, keeping his Bodhisattva vow of willingness to do one of the 7 in an extraordinary circumstance. But one's motivation needs to be like completely unselfish. He did it to protect that person's future karma. And then with that pure motivation, the karmic result of killing will be experienced by that ship captain in a very different way than killing for any other reason. And, you know, maybe when the time came for those seeds, you know, they say he bounced into hell and right back out again, but, you know, maybe not even that. But in his mind, he was willing, right, to take on the karma of killing. All right. Geshe gave another classical example. If your government has degenerated, it's curious that this is happening right now. If your government has degenerated and you are able to steal their power out of very great compassion for them and the country, you have not broken the morality of stealing, and in fact, you've done a good deed. He listed sexual misconduct. He said, for an ordained person, there can actually never be a situation where sexual misconduct can be justified. That even if you're in the situation as the ordained and somebody's forcing you to have sex with another and saying, I'll kill that other person if you don't, you're supposed to mentally give back your vows before you save the life of that other person by doing that deed. Lying, there may be a time when a great bodhisattva needs to lie to get other people to stop doing whatever horrible thing they are doing. Divisive speech, there may be a time when a great bodhisattva needs to purposely create a schism against a charlatan to get other people away from them. Harsh speech, there may be a time when a great bodhisattva needs to use harsh speech because the person they're correcting couldn't hear you in any other way. And there may be a time when a great bodhisattva needs to do idle speech, which for an ordained person is singing, dancing, and playing music. Somehow that's idle behavior. If it's the only way to attract people. So again, with this vow, if we don't have those 5 qualities of a great bodhisattva, we should not be tempted to kill, steal, sexual misconduct, lie, divisive speech, harsh speech, useless speech, thinking that we're benefiting others by doing so. Yet, we can't aspire to be such a bodhisattva should we ever, right, grow those qualities and are in that situation. Our willingness to do those behaviors is a necessary piece of our bodhisattva hood. Yeah. Okay. Number 12. I will avoid being engaged in wrong livelihood or getting support or sponsorship in a wrong way. Again, this is geared towards the ordained. And then the Master Chandra Gomi's text, he adds for the benefit of lay people an advice by someone named Master Bodhibhadra about lay ways of making a living. So for the ordained, again, the ordained people are seeking sponsorship from the lay people. And there are these 5 different wrong ways of trying to elicit support. The first one's called by flattery. So you go and you flatter somebody in order to get them to give you what you're wanting from them, whether it's ordained or outside. By hinting, right? You're hinting, hinting around for what you want. By baiting, B-A-I-T-I-N-G, meaning you give them a little bit so that they'll give you more back. By harassment, just needling somebody until they give you what you want to get you off their back. And then by pretense, pretending like you're, more special or more holy in order to get those donations. So, you stretch those out to how it is that we as non-ordained people interact with the others in our world trying to get what we want. And as a bodhisattva, like, you just stop doing that anyway. But in life, we still do need to negotiate for needs and wants. And to what extent are we using these flattery, hinting, baiting, harassment, and pretense to get our needs met? And then Master Bodhibhadra says, well, more pertinent to lay people, to be making a living by any activity that's harmful to others is what we're wanting to avoid. Now, technically, everything we do is harmful to somebody in some way. But here he's saying more specifically, we would want to avoid trading in alcohol, weapons, butchery, silk, the silk industry, or grinding, a grinding mill, because of all the bugs, I guess, that get ground up. And the scripture says that the exceptions are that if you are in one of these occupations without any other option, you've got family mouths to feed, this is your job, it's been your family business, you're in it. As long as you're struggling to get out of it, you don't break the vow while you're still in it. Eventually, you on your spiritual path, you'll want to change it, they say. 13th, I will avoid acting wild or frivolous, meaning wasting time being goofy, just horsing around. But there are exceptions to this one. If you have the habit of that and you're sincerely struggling to stop but can't control yourself, you don't break the vow while you're right when your struggle fails. Secondly, if you're trying to stop another's grief or depression, so you're acting goofy to try to cheer them up, you don't break your vow. If you are trying to distract somebody else from a bad deed, if it would improve the environment to bring others to a better space, not exactly sure what that means, or if it would attract people to Buddhism who wouldn't otherwise come. Number 14, we're almost done here. Number 14, I will avoid telling others that they need to delay their nirvana or enlightenment in order to help others. I will avoid telling others they need to delay their nirvana or enlightenment in order to help others. So apparently, as these vows were being needed to develop, some bodhisattvas must have been saying to others, bodhisattvas, they're going to bring every being to their enlightenment. So you just want to stay in samsara as long as you can until there's nobody else to help. And that's a big mistake. And apparently we still hear that. Geshe calls it a dharma rumor, that bodhisattvas delay their enlightenment. I've seen it in the literature that's said. There's no better way to help anybody, let alone all sentient beings, than reaching our own nirvana and or enlightenment, so that we have the tools and wisdom to really help the others in that deep and ultimate way. And once you reach that state, then you choose to return to suffering realm to help beings. It's different than saying, I'm going to stay here as a suffering being a bodhisattva until everybody's finished. Then saying, I will become Buddha and then come back and help others. So are they still in samsara? It's a great debate. Not from their side. But have they come back to samsara to help beings? Yes. Okay. Number 15. I will avoid failing to address rumors about myself. So if we know that there are rumors flying, as a bodhisattva, we break this vow if we don't go try to clear it up. The bodhisattva doesn't care one whig about the rumor flying around. They know where it's coming from. They know why it's happening. But they know that those who are spreading the rumor are making terrible karma. And so they want to go help those making terrible karma to stop making terrible karma. And what it looks like is that they go and try and clear up the rumor. Right? Technically, how do you clear up rumors about yourself? Right? Stop doing rumors about anybody else. Right? And the bodhisattva knows that as well. But they're wanting to help the other person who's making the negative karma stop making that negative karma. Number 16, I will avoid not correcting others, even if it must be done forcefully. I will avoid not correcting others, even if it must be done forcefully. So there may come a time where the circumstance is such that the only way you can help somebody is to be forceful or wrathful. What they mean by wrathful is like when the mother of the small child who runs out into the traffic, right? Rah, grabs them, smacks their bottom, yells at them, and it looks like mom is angry. But mom is not angry. She's out of her love. She needs to make this impact on this child so that they won't do that again, to protect them. So there may come a time when, I don't know what situation that might be, but out of your love for the other who's doing something like the 3-year-old running into traffic, and you know, and act. And the sweet little bodhisattva, right, probably doesn't want to do that. And this vow says, when you gotta, do it, you know, act to protect the other. It's not saying when you're angry and pissed off at somebody, you can be mean to them. That is not what this is saying. And if we have a tendency to that kind of acting, be very careful with this vow. Get it really clear, the difference between, right, the angry mom, angry at the kid for other things, and now they run out in the street, and now it's like, oh, right, carte blanche to, you know, beat the poor child to a pulp. It's like, no, that is not this vow. This is love in forceful action. Okay, and then to not do that when it's necessary is what breaks the vow, right? It's based on motivation, you know, strong motivation. Okay, yes, hola.
So we're not angry, we're feeling love. Does it mean that we must correct everybody all the time?
No. No. No, it does not. In those special circumstances, right?
How to know?
I know, right? You are the judge, right? Buddha's not looking down at us and saying, how well did Oha keep her bodhisattva vows today? They are not doing that. Right? These are our own judgments of our interaction with others. Who are you responsible for correcting? Yeah, ourselves, right? Those who have asked us, right? Maybe there'll come a time when somebody has put themselves in your hands, right? If you have children, they're in your hands. But once those kids are adults, you know, at some point they're not in your hands anymore unless they say, you know, Mom, will you continue to help me grow up, please? And then you're back in the position of, okay. Right? So who, put yourself in the lone position. Like, who is it that you would want to come out wrathfully to correct you? You want the grocery clerk to do that? Probably not. But do I want my Lama to do that? Probably yes. You know, do I want my partner to do that? Yeah, yes. Right? The same kind of idea. Who's really under my charge? Eventually, you're right, everybody will be, but not till they ask. Yeah. Until then, we set example. We set example. Yeah, nice. Good. It's good to think about these things.
Thank you
We
so
want
much.
them to be black and white. And they are not. Are you getting the picture? These are all shades of gray. And we work them out by living. And that's why we have our 4 powers and we have our book. And right, we really, I'll be so bold as to say we're not meant to do these perfectly. They are perfectionizers, just like our perfections. We'll do them perfectly when we are Buddhas. Meanwhile, they are how we get there as we try and fail, right? Try and fail. It's all right to fail, right? Especially with the secondary vows, because we restore them. Remember the regret part? Quick regret makes the seed not even get hard enough to grow. So just this healthy state of mind about my bodhisattva vows, well, not quite. I regret that. I regret that. Where regret as a negative state of mind is a virtue. It's not guilt. It's not, I'm so ashamed of myself. I'm never good enough. I can't possibly, it's not that, right? If you have that inside, find it and weed it out. However you get rid of that stuff, get it out of there. Get this relationship with regret. Allow yourself to fail and it's okay. Just fix it, right? Just fix it. Hey, if we don't fail, sometimes we don't know what to fix, right? As we were training, remember training in something, whether it was violin or volleyball or whatever, we didn't know how. We learned new skills. We messed up lots of times, but we wanted to learn so badly that we kept coming back and coming back, and we got better and we got better and we got better. And then it got fun. And even when it was fun, we still messed up from sometimes because we had good days, we had bad days. But because it was fun, we kept at it, until we got too old to play. But the same in our spiritual path, right? We're not going to be perfect. But if we want it badly enough, we'll keep coming back and keep coming back and keep coming back. And we have the guidelines. We're being given the guidelines. ACI 1 through 18 is the guidelines in depth, like so in depth. All right, nice. So we have the first 16 of our secondary vows. Your instructions is to think about them and see which ones fit your life and see what they're like to try them on for size. So remember that being we wanted to be able to help. We've learned a lot that we will use sooner or later to help them in that deep and ultimate way. And that's a great, great goodness. So please be happy with yourself. And think of this goodness like a beautiful glowing gemstone that you can hold in your hands. Recall your own precious holy being. See how happy they are with you. Feel your gratitude to them, your reliance upon them. Ask them to please stay close, to continue to guide you, help you, inspire you. And then offer them this gemstone of goodness. See them accept it and bless it. And they carry it with them right back into your heart. See them there, feel them there. Their love, their compassion, their wisdom. It feels so good, we want to keep it forever. And so we know to share it by the power of the goodness that we've just done. May all beings complete the collection of merit and wisdom, and thus gain the 2 ultimate bodies that merit and wisdom make. So use those 3 long exhales to share this goodness with that one person, to share it with everyone you love, to share it with every existing being everywhere. See them all filled with happiness, filled with the wisdom of loving kindness, and living according to it. And may it be so. Okay. Thank you again. I'm stopping the recording. Stop. Stop. Yes.